Hi everybody, I'm Jennet Ingle, the 5-Minute Read Maker. Listen, if you're watching this on YouTube, can you go ahead and click subscribe? It will help you to know whenever I drop a new episode. It will help other people to find my channel more easily. Today we're having a read repair shop with Oboist number 377, Anonymous Oboist. This person's reads are all really consistent, which makes it very easy for me to determine what's going on. This person was concerned about stability up in the upper register but didn't want to sacrifice response. And so I think we came to a really good understanding of what needed to happen there. Look, you've sent me 3 reads. 1 is quite finished, 2 you're not quite happy with yet, and 3 is much more unfinished. And your specific concern was pitch and stability and tone in the upper register. And I completely get that, and I'm excited because I think I can help you. Here's your read number 1. It looks gorgeous, right? It's perfectly nicely constructed. It looks as though, if anything, you might be just like a smidgen overwhelmed. And I'm not criticizing yet, actually. I'm not sure yet if that's the case. But it looks like it might just be up over 47 just a little bit. But I don't really feel that in the quality of the read. But as I look at your measurements, everything sits just a little tiny bit higher than my norm. That is to say, your bottom of your heart's at about 61, 62, top of your heart's at 66, 67, and the read overall is about 71 and a half, which is merely observing. I'm not saying anything bad about that, although I would probably have mine just a little bit lower down in all 3 of those categories. But what I hear in the crow is just the littlest bit of a chirp, right? A little bit of a squeak before it actually engages with the low crow. And when I play it, I really love the response. It feels so easy and effortless to play. But I feel exactly what you're feeling, that the upper register is just a little bit frightening, like it could go anywhere up there. And I hear that chirp again. And all of this, I think, comes down to how extremely thin your tip is right in the middle of the tip. You've said that number 1 is the most finished and it feels good to you. So let me not touch it yet, but I'm going to come back and look at that chirp after we explore a little further. Now read number 2. You said it just feels like it needs more to vibrate more somewhere. It's just, but you're not sure quite where. The response is not too bad, but you wouldn't be able to play it as comfortably as number 1. And my immediate observation of this when I looked at it was that it all sits even a little bit higher than read number 1. You've got a stronger, longer heart. The heart itself is sitting from, looks like 61, going up to the gutter of the rooftop at clearly a 67. So that definitely feels a little high to me. It's the same on both sides. But, again, you have lovely response, which you knew. And for me, this actually feels a little bit better in terms of stability, maybe because there's a little more bulk in the heart. But I still observe the same thing in the tip, that you're actually very thin right in the middle of the tip and not thinner than it as you go toward the outsides. And I think that we're going to find, as I start to work, that the sides of the tip are going to be your key to greater stability up high, and to maybe a prettier tone up there too. Read number 3, as you said, is less finished. I can really feel, as I like squeeze it in my fingers, how strong it is, especially in the back and the windows. And because it is the least finished of the 3, I'm going to start by working on it. what I feel in this read is that although the tip is vibrant, there's a wildness here and like a scariness a little bit. And the opening feels very strong to me. Like I have to really muscle it with my mouth to hold the opening shut, which then destabilizes my notes, because of course I'm using suddenly my teeth in my embouchure a little bit to hold on to this reed. And all of these reeds have are noticeably thinner at the top of the heart than they are at the bottom, which is another thing that you mentioned in your note to me, that you tend to have extra thickness here compared to the rest of the heart. And I guess I would ask, is it that there's extra thickness here, or is it that it's too much thinness up here? Because like clearly you and I like reeds to be a little bit different, because this one that you think feels perfect to me feels a little bit light and a little bit light and a little bit bright. But I'm going to try not to wreck that quality while I try to give you a little bit more response and stability, more stability up top, hopefully not taking away that good response. So here on our reed number 3, which is the hardest of them, and the one where you've done the least up in the tip, in other words, it is not yet sort of emptied out in this region. So I'm going to go ahead and clip and scrape the very, very sides. And you've mentioned that like the corners in the tip are of concern to you. And of course they are, right? They're really, really delicate. It's easy to wreck them. So I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing with my fingers here. So I have my left hand, my non-dominant hand, holding onto the reed. And as I scrape, I'm really using this finger so strongly to direct the reed at the knife and to direct the knife through the reed, so that really all of the finesse and the power of this scrape are happening here between my non-dominant thumb and forefinger. Here I am trying to get a little bit more off of the very right-hand side of this reed. And I'm doing that, I'm wiggling my knife a little bit, but mostly my finger is going and pushing that reed into the knife. And on the other side, you'll see it happening over here on like the knuckle of my finger. Really directing that right through and trying to get the side, the rightmost and leftmost, like 2 or 3 grains, no more. And then the very, very corner. And I'm sure you've seen some of my other videos where I scrape very aggressively up here and I scoop and curl and do all sorts of dramatic stuff. That's not what I'm doing here. This reed is already far too finished for me to be aggressive, and the very, very sides of the tip are too delicate for me to be that aggressive. So this is the quality of cane I'm taking off, and I'm really trying to do it in tiny, tiny scrapes just to get to the corner. And my goal is to have left enough good stuff in the middle of the tip to give you stability up top. I'll dip that. I suspect that I'm going to need to clip, but I'm going to play it first. So obviously I've dropped the crow. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and clip because it just wants that. Just microscopically almost. I don't know if you can hear over the video, but to me there's already a greater sweetness in the sound up top, and there's a lot more stability. I don't have to hold on to it nearly as tightly. Now, the other thing that I think gives us stability is having enough comfortable resistance in the heart. Now, clearly your resistance is by design a little bit less than mine, but I wonder what would happen in this reed if we take a little bit if we remove resistance from within the windows rather than from the heart. Your tendency seems to be to slope the heart pretty dramatically from within. And I'm going to propose that we try to open up the sound and relax the reed back here instead. And this should have the effect of making the heart think it's a little bit thicker, giving you a little bit more structure, a little bit more stability there. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to be very gentle because you've really got a nice, attractive scrape back here. Again, you've seen me be a lot fiercer than this, and I'm being gentle because I like your reed and I don't want to just turn it into my reed, because that's not what you want necessarily. For me, that crow seems a little bit... What happened? I liked it, and then I crowed it again, and suddenly there was a, not a chirp, but like a little shriek in it, which I didn't like. And for that, I'm going to go back up to the transition area and just look at how the, because I've got a shriek, I've got a weird sound in the crow. I just want to see how the vibrations are getting from the tip into the heart. And as I look at it, I feel that there's a lot of strength right at the side of your heart that is not necessarily borne out in this area. And reasonable people can disagree, right, about the bark on the sides of the heart. I tend to remove it. I don't generally see bark on yours, but your scrape in the heart feels a little bit more like a compromise than mine, where a lot of your work is done in this kind of area. And I just want to see what happens if we arc over the sides a little bit more. So, far left, very gently across, almost no pressure. Far right again. See how I'm just taking off the very, very outside edges and trying not to affect anything in the middle. Let me re-dip. I don't think you're going to like the response in this read as much as you did, as much as you do the others, because it feels far, far more comfortable to me than it did before. So let's see if we can find that response without sacrificing the good stuff in the middle of the tip. I'm going to try to go right to the gutter of the rooftop and just be good and clear about that cut in right there, because I don't want to be overly intense about the cut in the center of the tip. I only want it on the sides. Let's see if we can find you response there. It's a nice, easy crow. It seems to be a C already. And to me, that feels pretty good. Now, again, you had asked about this region of the heart, and honestly, it doesn't really bother me. I do, in my own reed making, like to open up this region right below the heart quite a lot. And I'm a little bit sloppy, I would say, about my spine, right? You have a very clear spine that goes all the way to here, and I can see where right here you resist scraping. And it's not really a problem. I do take that region out to help me collapse the reed, because I would rather the opening of the reed was a little bit more manageable, and I manage that from back in this area. But I don't dislike it on yours necessarily. Now, let's continue up with reed number 2 here. Reed number 2 is noticeably less scraped out in the back, has a noticeably longer heart than either of the other two. Has a resistance that I find fairly comfortable. And actually has a really nice, comfortable stability up top. So I would like to see if we can find a way to scrape this that isn't going to take away the good stuff in the middle of the tip. So, and isn't going to take away your beautiful response. Honestly, my instinct with this reed is to, the only thing that I can see that is wrong with it is that the, the top of the tip, the top of the rooftop, the gutter of the rooftop, sits like a full millimeter higher than I would ever dare to put it. And the length of this heart feels like probably the thing that is holding you back. And judging from your other two reeds, I think your gut feeling would be to raise what is currently the wall at the bottom of the heart to like here-ish. There it is right now. And you, I think, want it up here. And my instinct is to lower your rooftop just a little bit and bring the whole thing down to collect it down a little bit more. And you know, the reason that I'm going to go with my gut rather than yours is because I'd also like to get us into this slightly heavier part of the heart and see what happens. Because your scrape, as we've already discussed, goes quite downhill through the heart. So like here at the top of the heart in the middle, you're at 44. And then as we move a little further back, still 44. But then right in that heavy place that you keep talking about, you're 46. You're right at the wall, you're at like 48. And on the other side, I think it's going to be a similar story. Now, all of that is definitely lighter than I make my own reeds. I think I'm generally always in the high 40s, low 50s in the middle of the heart. And all of your numbers here hit lower. So it just makes me think that instead of being brave enough to work the sides and corners of your tip to make that for sure the thinnest part and to cause response there, your tendency is to go into the heart looking for response. And that's inevitably going to lead to a lack of stability. So what I'm going to try to do here is bring your rooftop back a little bit in order to have us in the slightly heavier part of your heart, then work the windows from below. Because I just think this reed is structured a little weirdly. So I'm going to bring your rooftop back 0.5 millimeter, maybe 1 millimeter. And notice again this technique that I'm doing with my finger. Every scrape that I do, I'm thinking about weighting my knife toward the outside of the reed. So when I'm on the right, I'm here. When I'm on the left, I'm here, weighting my knife at the tip. Because ideally, every stroke takes me both downhill through the slope of the tip and outward, so that I'm just automatically building in that diagonal slope that I want. Same here, lowering the rooftop, 0.5 mil. Focusing really hard on the outside with tiny, tiny strokes. And then I'm just going to clean the windows a little bit before I re-soak and try it. A little more on the outside. Okay, I didn't do actually all that much other than the lowering of the rooftop, which is a big deal. We've dropped the crow quite a lot. That's great. Tiny clip. That brought it up. Is it up too much? Up enough? I think I want it one more because it's so easy to get. It feels so easy to get the low crow. I want that to resist me just a little bit more. I'm going to turn it over. Sorry, when you first sent this read to me, it seems that the lower blade was on the side with the 2 rather than the side with the crossover, and it's making me second guess myself over and over again, so I just turned it over to the side with the crossover. Other than that, it feels too easy for me. I think this is a pretty nice read. I'm going to do just the littlest bit more at the corners and sides of the tip. Again, looking for stability at the very top. So I always think about the side. I always think about this good stuff in the middle of the tip as being what stabilizes my high register. And because you don't seem to naturally build that in, I'm trying to artificially build it in by focusing my attention at the very edges. Because even if it's super thin in the middle, if it can be thinner on the sides, that's the result you want. A little bit more here. And you know, I did this once, but then I clipped. And of course, because it's sloping, every time I clip, I move into a slightly thicker place. I've intriguingly lost my crow, but let's see what we've got. Oh, I don't like that nearly as well. Let's clip and see if we can re-stabilize. And I'll go back and forth on a reed between scraping the tip and clipping, scraping, clipping, scraping, clipping over and over again if I have to, till I find the balance that is just right. So when you sent this, you commented that you felt like it needed to vibrate more somewhere and you just weren't sure where. Response was not too bad, but you couldn't play it as comfortably as read number 1. I'm hoping that what I've just done, which is basically shortening the heart from the top and the bottom a little bit, and reworking the sides and corners of the tip, has given you that. It certainly feels comfortable enough to me. Then we're back on your read number 1, which was the most finished by far. Ah, this is the one with the shriek in it, I remember now. Do you hear the little chirp that's just like right ahead of the articulation? Especially in the high register. That chirp to me always says that there's something wrong with the slope in the tip. So let's look. And as we know already from looking at this, the thing that is wrong with the slope in the tip is the thinness at the very, very center of the tip and the lack of more thinness on the sides. And I don't know on this one if I can actually get the sides to be any thinner than they are. It looks to me, by the way, as though on this read, and I didn't notice this as much on the others, the left side is definitely heavier than the right. And you've taken just like the littlest slice of the edge off on the right side on both blades, which is like a thing, right? And if I want to pull this read back together, I think I'm gonna do a combination of what I did with 3 and with 2. I want to pull this rooftop back 0.5 millimeter just to give myself a little bit more runway in the tip. And I want to take the sides, the bark at the sides of the heart to see if I can round out the reed a little bit more, sweeten the sound a little bit more. And my biggest agenda is to try to make the sides of the tip thinner than the center of the tip. That's the real key ingredient here. So 0.5 mil back, trying to imitate how strongly your cut in happens, but not take it all the way into the middle of the reed. One more on the other side. And yeah, actually, as I'm digging in here with my knife, I really am noticing that the very left hand 2 or 3 grains are noticeably not as thin as their counterparts on the right hand side. Sorry, I think I'm leaving the screen a little bit as I work. So I've dropped my crow, I don't hear the chirp anymore, and I'm going to clip. The crow's back up, and I don't hear the chirp. I'm still not crazy about the stability up there. I feel like the high C especially wants to fly, but it doesn't chirp anymore, which seems tremendously better. We do a tiny bit at the sides of the heart, as I'd mentioned. I just find that if I make the sides of my heart as the thinnest parts of the heart, that I get a little bit more sweetness in the sound, and I get a little bit more fluidity from note to note. And sometimes it drops the crow a little bit, which would make it so that I could clip, which I like the idea of. And I'm still just obsessing a little tiny bit about the gutter on the left-hand side. There we are. There's the high register, there's the sweetness. But you're not going to like the response. So how can we find a compromised position here? My gut feeling is that you've been getting your excellent and immediate response by cutting in hard right in this area, right in sort of the middle of the rooftop. And that maneuver scares me because of the chirp that we caused and because of the lack of stability in the highest register. Now that I've drawn that rooftop, I'm super aware that this lower blade is sitting too high, so I'm just going to drop it only the littlest bit. Make sure I'm following through on that scrape, right? I cut in, but I let my cut in be stronger at the gutter than at the peak of the rooftop. And as soon as I scraped, I started following through and making sure that I'm just petting that cane all the way out to the corner. There we go. I really hope this has been helpful. This has been a Reed Repair Shop episode. If you too would like this kind of service done on your own reeds, if you'd like my eyes on them for you, feel free to check out my website, jennetingle.com, which is also where you could order reeds or cane, or reach out to me an email and suggest other topics that I could cover for you, or ask me questions. So thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.